Welcome, Formula One fans. This is the Formula One News Hour. I am your host, Jonathan Steele, and welcome to 2024. It's January the 6th, and it is a beautiful day here in Austin, Texas. And of course, we don't have a lot of Formula One news, and so until the season starts, we're going to be doing things like we're doing today, and also, of course, picking up on the history of Formula One and doing some history of the drivers. But first, let's start the year by thanking our sponsors who are still with us. Thinology at thinology.com, a small data center in Austin, Texas, providing all things technical, co-location, private cloud, public cloud, and managed services. So if you've got any technology needs at all, please think of our friends at Thinology. That is thinology.com. Also, of course, Moms for Liberty, always looking out for our kids. Moms for Liberty is on a mission to get you, the parents, involved and helping out with your child's education, getting you on school boards so we can get some semblance of, how would we say, sanity back into the school systems and get our kids learning the things they need to learn, which is math, English, science, and things like that, that will help them when they get out of school and enter the workplace. All of this social engineering stuff doesn't help them at all make a life for themselves once they get out of school. So Moms for Liberty is out there doing their best to get these school boards and teachers and everything to get back on with the program like we used to do in the 60s and the 50s. Yes. Great times for education. When you think of all of the super science, all these electronic things that you're playing with today, all this technology really came from the guys that were educated in the 50s and 60s. Oh, that would be me, by the way. I'm not taking credit for the technology, but I do want to thank Moms for Liberty at momsforliberty.org. Please get out there, join one of their chapters, and help out. momsforliberty.org. Also, of course, our friends at Give, Send, Go. Life can throw you curveballs, and when you've got a curveball hit you, what you need is somebody to go to that can help you out. And of course, we're talking about financially here. It's a crowdfunding entity without any, how do we say, censorship. So if you've got a need, or your friends or your family, or even just folks that you don't know that need help, and there's a lot of them out there, guys, then please go to Give, Send, Go. That is Give, Send, Go. Okay, this week we're going to be dealing with essentially three things. We're going to be talking a little bit about Helmut, and a little bit about Gil de Ferran, and a little bit about Adrian Newey. Okay, Helmut, of course, we're talking about Helmut Marko, the sometimes, how would we say, vilified, ridiculed, and all those other things as part of Red Bull. Many people think that he's number two at Red Bull, but I think in Red Bull, the number two guy is Adrian Newey. But anyway, if you get a chance, we did an interview with Helmut at the Grand Prix here in Austin a few months ago, back in middle of October, month and a half ago. One of the things that I found about Helmut was he's a very almost introverted guy. I know he comes out on the sometimes on the TV is maybe a bit blustery and stuff like that, but he's a very thoughtful guy. He's a very, very intelligent guy. And for those of you that do not know that much about him, Helmut is really responsible for the likes of Max Verstappen, Danny Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel, actually quite a few of the top Formula One drivers of the last probably 10 to 15 years, going through his development schools. And Adrian Newey, in fact, has paid a lot of compliments to Helmut and the program that he's put together there. But the most interesting things I found about talking to him during our interview is that Helmut is a little bit like me. He's a purist. So, we kind of feel like the Formula One cars of today are essentially overgrown go-karts with nice aerodynamic bodywork wrapped around them. And when you think about it, compared to the drivers of yesteryear, the drivers of today really are steering and changing gear. The drivers of yesteryear really drove the cars, and it's really interesting to hear Helmut talk about that. He would like to see, like me, and I think others of the purist age would like to see us de-technologize the Formula One car, put back in manual transmissions, take away the power steering, and really put the drivers back to actually driving race cars, where you have to toe and heel, where you have to physically push a clutch in and out, every 2 or 3 seconds. Because if you listen to the gear changing, which is pretty much automatic these days, you'll hear those gear changes a lot. And as Jim Clark, the incredible driver from the 60s, once said, he said, I get blisters on my hands and feet from driving these cars because of how often we change gears, how hot they are inside there. Today, the drivers are put in such a beautiful position, and that the whole car is really built to wrap around them and to make them, one, as comfortable as can be, right? And two, of course, to be as safe as can be. And that's, of course, when we say de-technologize the cars, we do not want to take away the technology that protects them. We do want to take away some of this technology that, let's say, saves them often. In the years past, you could hit the wrong gear, you'd over-rev the engine, it would blow up, and you were out of the race. Those things just can't happen today because of the onboard electronics and the automatic shifting. You can't shift from say sixth down to second accidentally, like you used to be able to do in the cars of yesterday or yesteryear that had the gate, what we call the gate shift. If you actually looked down and you saw the gear lever, for you older Ferrari owners out there, the Ferrari, of course, was a street car that featured the gate shift. And so one of the nice things about the gate is kind of helped you guide the gears, so you couldn't go from fifth to first, right, or from sixth to second. So the gate shift helped you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Helmut would like to see those days come back because he really believes that the drivers back then really drove the cars, whereas today it's a much different animal. And talking of drivers, he's been criticized for his criticism of Checo Perez. And if you listen to the podcast we did, he talked about Checo briefly. And one of his criticisms of Checo was not that Checo was not a good race car driver during the race. His criticism was more that Checo couldn't get the most out of the car during the qualifying sessions. Certainly, he doesn't get the most out of the car in the race either. But Helmut's criticism was more of the fact that during qualifying that Checo really struggled. The other thing that is really interesting, when I was talking to him about Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, one of the things that he mentioned was he said, Max Verstappen lives, breathes, sleeps, eats everything racing. When he's not on the track, he's on a simulator. When he's not on a simulator, he's on the track. When he's not either on the simulator or on the track, he's in the garage. He lives, breathes, in everything. His whole life is Formula One racing. Lewis Hamilton is only a Formula One driver when he's doing his simulation driving and when he's on the track. When he's at home, he's got other interests and doing lots of other things. And so he believes that Max will be a better Formula One driver for a longer period of time than Lewis Hamilton. Now, don't take anything away from Lewis Hamilton. The guy's an incredible driver. But, I asked him, the differences, how would the drivers, how would Jim Clark, Graham Hill, John Surtees, Jack Brabham, how would those guys do in the cars of today? And then how would the guys today do in the cars of yesteryear? And of course, it's a very hard comparison, right? Because the one of the things that he pointed out today is the extreme G-forces that the drivers undergo today, compared to back then. If you look at the times, there was one particular track, it might have been Monaco, I think I was looking at, and the cars today are getting around that track 25 seconds faster than the cars back in the 60s. Now, the braking systems, the steering, I mean, everything's completely different. But I think the big difference is the drivers of yesterday drove the cars. The drivers of today steer the cars. And that's about it. If you really think about it, that's about all they're doing. They're steering and hitting the gas pedal and the brake pedal. But other than that, the car is doing everything else. The cars today, you can't over-rev them, you can't stall them, you can't, all that kind of, it's all electronically controlled. The cars of yesterday, you could over-rev them, you could blow the engine, you could stall the car, and back then, once the engine stopped, you had to wait for a mechanic to come out, run up behind the back of the car, and get them to start it. In fact, there's some footage out there, I think it was about 1980, 1982, where one of the drivers, I don't remember which one it was now, his car stalled on the starting grid. And so, he put his arms up, he's waving like this to tell all the drivers behind him that he's stalled. Of course, the race got going, and one of the mechanics went out there with a starter gun to try and start the Formula One car, and got ran into by one of the other cars that hadn't seen the guy waving his arms. But anyway, please, if you get a chance, go out and watch our interview with Helmut Marko. We put it up, I guess, 2-3 weeks ago, but you can get it where you get these podcasts. And I think once you watch and listen to that particular interview, for those of you that are very critical of Helmut Marko, I think your whole opinion and attitude towards him will change. I think he is a very, very valuable part of not only Red Bull, but of the development of race drivers coming up today. So anyway, on to the second spot of this week's podcast. And the second spot is sad news. Of course, the sad news is that Gil de Ferran died last week. Actually, I think it was on December 29th. He and his son were in like a private little race down in Miami. He was just 56 years old and died of a heart attack while at the wheel. Well, he didn't actually die at the wheel. Well, he did die at the wheel, but he managed to get the car pulled over and stopped before he actually died. Gil came up at the same time as a lot of guys from Brazil. Around the era, or I should say, a little after, there were Emerson Fittipaldi fans, and they really wanted to get into Formula One. Unfortunately, Gil never did quite make the cut into Formula One. He did of course, move from Brazil to the UK, and he did drive in Formula 4. Some Formula 3, some Formula 3000, and some Formula 2, and he did get an opportunity to test drive a Formula 1 car, but he just didn't have it as a Formula 1 driver. But his talents as a race car driver were picked up by none other than the IndyCar League, and he had quite a successful career in IndyCar. Driving at the end there for Roger Penske, and in fact in 2002 he won the Indy 500. So he was 56 years old when he died last week of a heart attack, which is today's world very, very young. But he did get into Formula One, and in fact not as a driver but as a manager. And a technical director and a consultant and everything. So from about, I'm going to say he got into Formula One 2007, 2008, and he went through, he was managing, I can't remember the name of the team now, but it only lasted a couple of years, the team I'm talking about, not Gil. And then he moved on, and he actually was a technical director for McLaren for a while, where he left and then went back again a couple of years later and was a consultant at the time. And that was just as recent ago as in 2018. Excuse me, sorry. Anyway, so he sadly passed away, leaves behind, of course, a wife and 2 children. So the third part of our podcast this week is Adrian Newey. And my great producer, technical, all things guru technical, Andre Kuhn, did a very nice thing for me this Christmas. And that is, he purchased Adrian Newey's book, How to Build a Car. And folks, if you can see that, please, if you are interested in 2 things, if you're interested in the detail and the intricacies that go into a Formula One car, it's a must read. And also, if you're interested in how human a lot of these folks are that we seemingly idolize and just think are just the most incredible people on the face of the earth and they should be worshipped, then Adrian does a very good job of doing both the technical side, talking about his career from the very beginning. He got to be a race engineer at 22, 23 years old. It would never happen today, but like he said, he was very lucky. But also, he brings out a lot about Adrian Newey. One of the things that we kind of don't really think about when we see people on TV and we see people, and I'm not talking about movie stars and stuff like that, but like you take somebody like Adrian Newey, somebody like Max Verstappen, somebody like Jim Clark or Graham Hill, all of these guys who are very famous and they're on TV every week, and some of them are driving cars, and some of them are running large corporations like Elon Musk and stuff like that. And one of the things that you don't seem to realize when you're watching them and you're listening to them talk on TV is they're a lot like you and me. They've got wife problems, children problems, wife ecstasies, and I'm talking about just living life, and children the same way, where they have all the same issues that you and I have, and yet every day they still get up and do the things that they do that makes them famous. And one of the things that I think that I've looked and watched as I've seen people like Adrian Newey over my lifetime is, yes, Adrian studied aerodynamic engineering at Southampton University, and he actually went back there for many years using their wind tunnel in the design of his cars. But I think one of the things, apart from all of the education, I think one of the things that struck me is with all of these folks like this is 2 things. One, the incredible drive. Actually, 3 things. 1, the incredible drive. 2, the attention to detail. And 3, the tenacity to be successful no matter how many times you fail. And one of the things you'll find in reading Adrian's book, and please take the time. If you're into Formula One, it's a must read. Even if you're not an engineer. Fortunately, I'm an engineer, so I picked up a lot on what he was talking about from an engineering perspective. And also, of course, in a previous life, I don't talk about this much, but I was in refining and petrochemical plants for many years, and I used to do a lot of simulation modeling in my early years. And one of the things I used to model was airflow in fired steam heater generators and fired heaters and all that kind of stuff that are used to heat the liquids in a refinery and everything. And so I understand a lot about airflow. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about reading Adrian's book was the detail that he went into about how such minute things can affect downforce, as an example. And he does, of course, give a lot of praise to the early guys. Colin Chapman of Lotus cars, is really considered the father of downforce in ground effects. It really is, as we like to call it, in the Formula One cars. I think it was the Lotus 49 that actually our great and good friend Mario Andretti took to win the 1978 Formula One World Championship. That was the second year of the ground effects car. The first year there was a lot of tweaking and stuff like that going on, but in the first year, in the second year, Mario took it to a world championship for both himself and, of course, the constructors' championship. But Adrian does an incredible job of talking about all of the little things, the hours, the months sometimes that would go into trying to solve a single problem. And something that that really struck my mind, which I think is good, and I do it in a little way. I'm not saying that I'm anywhere near as smart or as clever as Adrian Newey, but one of the things that I do a couple of when I have an idea about something, today I run my own business, so when I have an idea, I usually just take the idea and sit on it. It's like when I have an email and I'm not sure whether I want to send it. I always have a 30-minute delay on my emails so that I can always, if I'm not sure about what I've said or some of the facts or something, it just doesn't feel right, I've always got an opportunity to go change it. And one of the things that Adrian notes in his book is that in the early days, they used to come up with these ideas and then they just rushed to implement them only to find out that really it wasn't the right idea at all. So now internally he has a system where ideas are put on the shelf, until everybody can really think about them more than just idea, think, do. It's idea, wait, think a while, is it still a good idea? The other thing, of course, that comes out in his book is, the balance that has to be kind of played between family and work. And of course, one of the things that really all really successful people, one of the traits they have, they can be obsessive. And Adrian Newey, in his own admission, is no different than any others. And once he latches on to a problem or to a project, then he becomes obsessive. And of course, when you're obsessive in one area, then you're lacking in another. So he's now on his third marriage. And it makes a very interesting point about his third marriage. His third marriage is to one of South Africa's best ever swimmers, a lady by the name of Amanda Loot. If you look her up, you'll see she went to the Olympics 3 times. She held a number of South African records. But he said one of the things that's making his marriage to Amanda work, where he struggled with the rest, she's a sports person, so she understands, and being a swimmer even more so, she understands the dedication, the hours, and the obsessive mentality that it takes to be successful. All of these top guys, whether they be in swimming, whether they be in football, whether they be in tennis, they're obsessive about detail, they're obsessive about winning, they're obsessive about being successful. And so the things that they're obsessive about take away from other aspects of their life. And of course, as Adrian points out in his book, sometimes he'd work 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day for 2-3 months at a time. So when you're working like that, well, guess what you're not doing? You're not paying attention to your relationship with your spouse. You're not paying attention to your children. There's all kinds of other things that you're not doing. And so, no matter Adrian's first 2 wives, not so much the first one, it was a shorter marriage, probably 4 or 5 years, but certainly a second marriage, which lasted about 20 years. You think, well, they're living in the lap of luxury. They, beautiful big home, everything you could, all the physical surroundings that you could think that any person would ever want, and yet here it wasn't enough. And so one day he came home, and both wives, it was the same way. He came home and they'd left and they'd gone. So, but some really, I think please buy the book. I think it's incredible. I'm really happy that Andre bought it for me. And of course, I'm an obsessive person as well. It took me 3 days to read it. It's 385 pages of a lot of technical stuff. But being of the mind, being the engineer, and really wanting to read it, yeah, I became obsessed with it. Getting home from my job every night, I'd sit down and I'd read for 3-4 hours until I got all the way through Adrian's book. So I would if you want to find out a couple of things about life, it's a good read. If you really want to find out a lot about what goes into the design of a Formula One car, it's a good read. And the other thing that's really interesting, Adrian's bumped in and bimped in. He knew George Harrison very well. He knew George Harrison through Damon Hill, Graham Hill's son, who was Formula One champion back in '94, maybe 93. Anyway, he and George Harrison became good friends. He was good friends with Paul Newman. Not a lot of people know that Adrian's first foray really into being a race engineer was in the Indianapolis series, in the Indy car series, which was called Kart and things like that back then. But he does have 2 Indy 500 wins to his name as well. In fact, his design of the chassis, which he was working for a company called March back then, his chassis design was used by most of the Indy car owners, including Penske. And of course, when he finally left the Indy series and went to Formula One full time, his chassis still won the Indy 500 a couple of times. So a very, very accomplished guy. I met him in Austin last year, and I'm hoping to get an interview with him. I talked to Christian Horner while we were in Austin. I think we might have posted those pictures up on Instagram or whatever. But one of the things I asked for was to interview Adrian and also interview Hannah Schmitz, the race engineer, not race engineer, but race strategist for Red Bull. So hopefully here in the next month or 2 months, we'll get to have those interviews. We do have interviews trying to line up with Michael Andretti, with the little young sensation Bustamante from the Philippines, who got signed by McLaren, and Jackie Stewart, of course. We're trying to arrange a interview with Jackie Stewart and also Damon Hill. So hopefully over the next few weeks we'll have those. But in addition to we're going to have our continued history of Formula One, and like I say, I can't wait to get back. We've missed our podcast here for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Been a busy time in my real world job. And of course, my kids, I call them kids, they're adults now, but the college graduation, getting into real life, just got a little busy there after the end of the Formula One season, going into the holiday season. So anyway, we will be bringing you lots more. And again, we want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank the folks at Thynology for their continued support. That's if you need technology, you need Thynology. That's where it gets its name from, by the way. For all of you techies out there, Thynology got its name from thin client technology. So you take a thin client, thin, and then technology, and that's how Thynology derived its name through the advent of thin client technology. Just an FYI, they were one of the very first companies out there in technology world to get into what we call the cloud. Now, Thynology started the cloud their cloud back in 2004, long before the big guys decided it was a great idea. So please go to Thynology.com, and you need co-location, private cloud, public cloud, and things like that. All things technology, please go to Thynology.com. Also, the folks at Give, Send, Go, they've been around now for about 3-4 years, providing crowdfunding for folks that find themselves in need of money. It could be medical bills, Maybe you just want to start a business. Yeah, you can use crowdfunding to start a business. Or maybe you're just that type of person, you'd like to help some people that you've read about in the news that really need help. Then you need to go to givesendgo.com. And of course, most of us, I'd say probably 80-90% of us are parents or grandparents, and we need to be helping our schools get back on track and teach kids math, science, English, and all that kind of stuff. How do we do that? We do it through Moms for Liberty. We go join one of the Moms for Liberty chapters. They've got nearly 200 throughout the United States, and we sign up and we get down and maybe get ourselves elected to a school board. Maybe we just go to the schools and become teachers helpers or become teachers. Just let's change the way that the schools are operating and trying to teach our kids about everything they don't need to know and get them learning things that they do need to know that will be useful to them when they get out of school and into the workplace. So please go to momsforliberty.org. That is momsforliberty.org. So until next week, this is Jonathan Steele saying thank you. And of course, we want to say thank you to Andre Kuhn, the guy that makes all of this look good, sound good, and of course, make me look good on film as well, which is a very difficult job to do. So until next week, have a great week.